And I'm live with Sana and Enrique, I.L.I friend. This is the simplified version of NiTx. That's I.L.I, the strategic contender. So, there she is. There she is again. And there's Enrique. So then, right then. So as you can see there, the valued functions are in blue. And you've got those 4 functions on the top are directed towards society. In the back of Dario Nardi's book, he talks about some research that he did with introverts. And he talked about how the introverts reported a moderate comfort. And that would be the least, and that would be the lowest amount of comfort that they would have with their introverted functions. So moderate was the least, and then other ones we were more comfortable with, because overall they're in that introverted mode and have moderate comfort, at least with all of those. So the extroverted functions only really come into play in specialized circumstances, such as when the I.L.I leaves the house or the computer. I don't know, something like that, something stereotypical. So you've got, so now we'll go on to the proper one. And I just want to remind people this thing about, so these long-range externalities, the way I come to think about this is the functions in the top row have a greater scope of use. So they're used more often. The extroverted functions have a more limited scope of use. So if you think about it, I.L.I resemblers are not doing extroverted sensing things that much. They might like to, but they're not doing, and they're certainly not doing FE that much. And they tend to ignore the NE. The TE, that's with them, they try to, a lot of the times they're in their heads. And when I've spoken to Haley about this, it's like when they do have the energy, they try to spend it very wisely and productively. Is that the case for you, Enrique?
For sure. I consider myself to be rather have a low energy for a lot of things. So when I apply my energy to anything, I make sure it is used efficiently and effectively.
Right. That is a theme. That is an I.L.I theme. And so this is part of Victor's mindsets system. So he's got here for the balance stable at the bottom. So I little p, the Socionics, receptive, adaptive, maybe there's lazy and grumpy, adaptive and smooth, depending on the oscillating levels of energy. Oh, look, he's got his pips levels. We'll be going over that in future, the pips levels. Yes. So, attentive, sitting back. Although, this might be a bit overdone. These, the feedback provider. Yes, I think the I.L.I is good at giving feedback, even when it isn't asked for. The critic, after all. So, so we've gone over the basic concepts of externalities, internalities. Now we're going to go over it in a little more detail. So we will look at, I think it's best to look at these as a pair of blocks. So the social mission block. So you got the NI working with, and in the case of, in fact, because of the way you are, I'll just read out a bit on that externalities, and then I'll zoom in that block for you. and not just for you, but for people watching on mobile devices. So externalities cortex activated by the external stimulation of the function in the launcher position. Right, so in the case of I.L.I, then they are, I suppose they're stimulated by being on rapport with somebody, or maybe they're stimulated by a value. That would be the theory with the launcher function there. What would stimulate their NI? So I'll ask you, Enrique, what do you think puts you into the NI mode?
I don't know if I ever get out of the NI mode. It's kind of difficult to articulate. I know one thing for sure is whatever I'm applying myself to, it needs to feel right, and I don't know what the hell that means.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
the FI.
Yeah, especially the FI with the TE. I think Dario would describe it as, I mean, he has TE as very empirical, and then you got the FI as the value. So it's like, we have to decide what is worth measuring, what is worth being produced. So you need those values, else how are you going to expend your work ethic on it? So it's very much determined by the FI and the NI. It's like that expression from Einstein. Was it? Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. So
yeah.
it's.
I would say that yeah, it's interesting. There's always some type of ethical principle attached to the big picture of whatever it is I'm doing, but the work that needs to be done to get there, I it's almost like I ignore my I don't really care about ethical principles that much while I'm doing the work.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to explain.
But before you get into a
That makes
project,
sense.
do you have a feeling about what is important to look at that you can't quite articulate, but a feeling of a direction you should go in?
Yes. It yeah. There's yeah, it's hard to explain.
Yeah, especially when it's with NI. That is
It needs to matter to me.
right.
In,
Right.
in a subjective sense.
Yep.
And that's all I need to get going, right? But once I'm going, I don't apply that same thinking to the individual tasks in between. So let's say I have to do something. Let's say I have to do really tedious and annoying work to get to a place where the end product of the project is gonna give me that subjective feeling of satisfaction or whatever the hell it is. I ignore it. I repress. I just work, and I don't care if I don't want to do the work. See, I just do it because I know that when I get to the end result, I am going to attain what I initially saw in my vision.
Lot of good functions working there together. The NI, the FI, and the TE. And when you said they're a good result, so, and you said you wanted that subjective feeling. So a result seems to imply to me an actual physical result that is measurable in a TE sense of, yes, I did this thing and this achieved such and such.
Correct. Yeah.
On a practical level, and I've got the good feeling about it.
Yeah, it needs to be something real.
Right.
It's essentially getting the vision out of my head and just making it real. And that's a really awesome feeling when that happens.
Right.
I try to do that as much as possible.
Yeah. So just as Hannibal Smith from the A team loves it when a plan comes together, I love it when people are really emblematic of the type, because they're very good. So we've got a lot of NI, FI, and TE there. And so the externalities thing, activated by external stimulation of function and launcher position. So we give you an idea there of the things that are important to you, the FI, and then how to measure it and get achievable success, and the steps to achieve that. Externalities indicates that this functional circuit is directed outward on society. The externalities group takes precedence whenever society is involved. Therefore, we placed it above internalities, because when it comes to survival and development, Socion of greater importance than a single type. So I'll put that in quotation marks, because that is something which is debatable as to how much that is the case of, say, certain types are going to have their social role more governed. And I've not said this before, I've just sort of come up with this now. This is what is great about Model G. It will just stimulate new thoughts. So when it says there that whenever society is involved, the externalities row comes into play, I'm thinking that more depends on the type. So, for example, I.L.I, not really directed towards society as much as, say, other types. Say, LSE administrator, TESX, and ESE, FESX, they're really more directed towards society. And therefore, their top row is going to have more of a precedence than with I.L.I, because I.L.I, they're just doing their own thing. It's not so much society. They're just doing enough for their survival. And in their case, I suppose it would be more the TE thing rather than the thing in the upper row. So this is an example of one of these things where it's going to vary by type, because society, and of course modern society that we're in, has different demands on it than other societies. So you get a lot of the TE and SE demands a lot in society. Not so much the NE and the FE as well. It's the society where there's a lot of manners involved. Yeah. There's not much of that. Sana doesn't... not much call for Sana to use FE in Finland.
Well, I mean, look at my father.
Yeah. But you can see how... So you can see how different societies and different occupations call upon functions in different amounts. So
I think that makes a lot of sense, because yeah, I guess if I were to be observed outside of my house, the very rare times I leave my house, all you would see is TE and SE.
Yeah. And in fact, the way you go about things, you may actually, and the way you interact with people, it may be a little bit ESTJ-ish, a little bit SLEist, because it's like, I want you to do this thing, and I'm here to make sure that you do it for me. We're in that mode, because a lot of the interactions of I.L.Is are going to be getting this person to do this thing that benefits me. That's the stereotypical version, and then those few people that they have rapport with. When you get the other side to the I.L.I, the good person that's in the center of them, that few people rarely see, and that stuff is in the Kersey profile of the mastermind. Just remind people of that. Right. So, oh yes, this is an idea that when working externally, that the functions in the externalities row repress the ones in the lower row, the internalities row. So theoretically, right now, my NE should be suppressed by the TI. And I suppose that does happen a lot of times where I want the structure right and it will repress it. Although a lot of times, Sana might think it's a bit of a wild horse and I'm a bit of a...
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a time when your NE is suppressed.
Yes. Well, okay. But I would say that because I'm on my territory, I'm acting like a little ENFP. So, social mission block, he thinks these two work together, and he thinks that for the I.L.I, that when they're not being practical, mustering their energy to do something practical, he thinks you've got the NI and the TI working together. Dario's belief is that that creative function, he calls it the sixth function in Model Beeb, the witch senate, is something that comes with development. And he wrote in a paper that, and we actually went over that paper, folks. If you go to the Hangout, you go in the search box, type in Socionics, I.L.I, Haley, and then we went over Dario Nardi's paper on the sixth function, which is the Beeb function for the creative position. Which is, just so people know, even though Sana resembles an NF, she doesn't particularly like the Beeb model, but because it's a very simple model, it's just reversed. So the sixth function here, TI, which Senex position. So getting back to here. So these two work together. Management function is pretty much just the same as the dominant in MBTI, and in terms of it's got a wide scope of use because it's an externality. It's got a lot of energy for it. In fact, it can almost be self-indulged. Those two functions in the management and demonstrative, so there would be ego block in Model A, they can be overindulged. So lion's share of the energy. Endowed with excess capacity, it consumes the lion's share of the psyche's energy. The more powerful the first function, the more distance the commutative field covers. So basically what that means is the stronger someone's dominant function is, the more noticeable it is. That's all that means. So, and then there's something here about, yeah, it sets the goals, but I would also say that other valued functions set goals as well. So, for example, I.L.I has, they have their SE needs, just as NIFX has their SE needs. They also have some needs from a rapport point of view, and they also have some needs from a TE point of view. So it's not just the lead function that is setting the agenda, in my opinion. I mean, everything gets filtered through that, but all of the valued functions are coming into play in terms of motivations associated with them. So I.L.I wants to contemplate. They want to be productive. They want to have rapport with people. And they want to do some extroverted sensing stuff, even if it's just computer games. Sana might be thinking, Ben, there is nothing just about computer games.
What?
There's nothing just about computer games. No need to belittle them.
Oh, well, I didn't take it that way, but I didn't think of it as C until you mentioned it.
No. So yeah, so the idea here is that this helps to implement this. So I would think that with I.L.I, that you have this introverted intuition of an image of a thing that's there that you can't, and you try to analyze it with the TI. You try to articulate it and get it logical. Is it something like that for you, Enrique?
Yeah, I noticed myself not in the act, but after the fact, I'm like, oh man, that was TI right there. It's not in my I don't feel that it's in my conscious control, but it's on for quite a bit. TE is different though. I'm in conscious control of TE.
Right.
So I would agree that when I'm not applying TE, I'm definitely there's a good chance that I'm just going with TI.
Yeah, and I would also think that folks might notice, hey, Ben's not interrupting. That's because Ben has had a good sleep. Right, and I'm interested in what you're saying as well. So it also might be the case of the way I.L.I is using TI. They're using TI as a tool. They're not using it in itself the way LII resemblers are, where they want to make connections between theories. So somebody asked David Kersey Jr., why are you trying to make connections between all of these fields of human knowledge? He would probably say, well, it's cool. It's the advancement of knowledge. There's no practical benefit to it. Whereas, so how do you think you use subjective thinking, Enrique?
I don't spin my wheels for the sake of spinning my wheels. Like if it needs to have a use, it needs to have some type of utility, or let's say, I mean, I'm a senior applications engineer, so when I'm building software or learning some type of new development technique, there needs to be a use for it.
Yeah.
So I there's always that filter in place where, you know, sometimes I look at a theory and I'm like, oh wow, that looks pretty interesting, but what can I use it for? And if I don't find a use for it, then I'm not going to bother with it. So
yeah,
that's pretty much
go on. Yeah, there is a quote, and I'm gonna find my darndest to it, but basically I can remember what the quote is, so I don't need to bring it up. In the Kersey profile for Mastermind, it says, every idea is subjected to the test of usefulness.
Yes. Yes. I 100% agree with that. And I've never heard that quote before.
It says later on in the profile for Mastermind, because he might have come across a lot of them, the Kerseys, given that his son worked in artificial intelligence in the 1960s and 70s and worked for DARPA. He was around a lot of them. And he was around a lot of people like himself. So they know the difference. He wrote stuff about not emotionally expressive, closet romantics. Then towards the start of the profile, they said they are the best at contingency management because they can see ahead. Where are the potential pitfalls and the things to avoid? if this, then. If this happens, then what do we do? So that thinking of with the NI and the TE. So basically, it was all there in the mastermind profile. And it's any socionics person that reads the mastermind profile and thinks that it best fits LII should have their socionics membership card taken away from them. Because honestly, and especially when the Kersey architect profile says something like, if an organization is to get their most out of a INTP architect rational, they need to provide them with an efficient support staff to capture their ideas as they emerge and before they move on to a more interesting idea.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yep. So I'll just show a bit on, there's a slight distraction, but it's a good one. So this is how Kersey saw the difference between the NTJs and the NTPs. So the alpha and gamma NTs in terms of order versus organization. So if you go through that and see, because this is like a physical example of TE and NI in action. And I just wondered if, can you see that okay?
Yeah, what do the colors mean?
Ah, the colors.
I'm trying to understand the algorithm of your color choice.
Right. I think that the TE stuff was in orange and the NI stuff is in purple.
Okay.
I think I did it for that because sometimes it's not consistent and because I've read it over a large period of time. Right. Okay. So, okay, that's it. So rank order, as I've put here, it's not really function based, but ranks or steps separate from each other. And then the serial order, getting the right sequence of events, doing things in the correct sequence. And of course, I think, and having an idea of that, to me, that's NI, because if it's sequence based, it's time based, and it's time based, then it's intuition of time, and it's the long range planning.
Well, yeah, everything has a long range purpose, whether people are aware of it or not.
Yeah, the I.L.I. resembling people, they tend to plan out rather further ahead than others. So I'll read this bit out for folks. We have 2 viewers at the moment. The other kind of order can be called serial order. Oh yeah, the bit above that about the ranks, that's more for ENTJs. The other kind of order can be called serial order. For instance, certain technical procedures require a series of actions that must follow in a very specific order. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Right.
And I think there's a good dose of TI that tends to be applied in those scenarios, specifically when you are observing someone else's work and say they're not following the correct order.
That is something I remembered. Yes, I should have said that. I.L.Is tend to use TI critically. In that, they find inconsistencies in other people's arguments. Is that fair?
For sure.
They are the critic. So what we got here? And then they did something about a revolver. The preparations for he was in World War II. The preparations for the invasion of Europe in World War II is an example of extreme complexity involving hundreds of planners over periods of years. Any error in the sequencing of operations fraught with peril and inviting disaster. So you can see the combination there, the intuition of time on a practical level, rather than with Sana, the intuition of time in terms of the development of people, whether individual in the counselor role or group in the educator role, or as a cult leader. Right, NTPs use it like this. It's a little bit different. This is just for comparison. This is more things working in parallel, but of course you're going to have to do that anyway because it's necessary to the subject. Organization, on the other hand, has to do with either devising and revising or configuring and reconfiguring complex systems that are composed of parts, not ranks or steps. Where the ranks or steps of an ordinal system are separate from each other, the parts of an organizational system are connected organically to each other, such that what happens anywhere in the system reverberates throughout the system. Thus, organizations of... Right, so you've got the lateral things and things operating at the same time and connecting together. And David Kersey Jr. writing about the edge of order and chaos. Now, coordinators do the work of what... the coordinators, these are the NTJs. So this is them if they did a job that perfectly reflected their functions. It would look like this. Now, coordinators do the work of what might be called arranging. Arranging is the act of determining the various levels of rank in order of words, hierarchy, layers, echelons. So that's more towards ENTJ. Or the consecutive steps, sequence, series, succession that are required to achieve long-range objectives. So do you do that kind of thing, Enrique? Have you got these long-term plans and all the steps in place? And think about the steps.
Yes. I tend to, when I'm given a task or when I think of something I have to do, I almost always break it down into subtasks that need to be executed in a sequential order.
Yep.
So
I'll just say it's very hard for NTPs to do that. Because as they're doing it, they get an idea for doing it another way or doing another thing, or they get bored. Whereas the NTJs, the gamma NTs have that ability to focus. So this is more how NTs work when they're well-developed kind of NTPs like Sana's father. For their part, engineers do the work of constructing. Constructing is the act of determining what parts of a system are supposed to do, its mechanism, or what parts of a system are required for it to work, its configuration. Mechanical constructing involves building functional working prototypes, while configurational constructing involves making detailed two-dimensional blueprints and three-dimensional models. Right, so he has the mechanical constructing leaning more towards ENTP because they're a little bit more practical, a little bit stronger TE, whereas you've just got the LIIs just configuring beautiful models and then somebody else can build it. It's a beautiful design. Both kinds of construction are undertaken to determine what structures are necessary and sufficient for the system to do its work most efficiently. Oh, what have we got? And then we'll end on this bit. So I've gone over a little bit into Kersey, but you know, it shows what it looks like in a practical sense. And also because of your career, Enrique, you do a lot of the things that the role variants do. Whereas there are those people who are of the same type, but they do things that are not typical of their type. Arrangement works to reduce disorder in systems. The two forms of being mobilizing. So ENTJ, mobilizing the campaign forces or the entailing of contingency plans. Construction, in contrast, works to reduce disorganization in systems, devising of prototypes, designing of models. Right, that's enough of that. We'll get back on track. That was just trying to put some functions into... Right, I'll just people can pause this. This is Carl Jung on how NI was used in Nietzsche. So people can pause that and read it to themselves. And then him being hot for extroverted sensor, Nietzsche. Super hot for it. Where he writes about, he's imagining like really hot for, even Sana might be thinking that's a little bit hot for the extroverted sensor. There, Nietzsche, calm down. Right. So people can read that. This is... So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go block by block rather than going through the whole thing. And then so we'll do the bullet points in 4 sections. So we did the idea there. The creative function is used as a tool. So TI is used as a tool by I.L.I resemblers. Every idea is subjected to the test of usefulness. can this idea be used to achieve something? And then the function implements or creates. The function is flexible and unconventional, which is also associated with creativity. Right, okay. I'm going to ask you something, Enrique. Do you sometimes, do you think, have a problem where, in hindsight, or even as you're doing it, because you know about functions, where you're thinking, oh, it appears I'm doing a TI thing now in order to solve this, rather than a TE thing?
Well, yeah, when I'm faced with the scenario where there may be a better approach, and perhaps there's a side of the system that I do not understand yet, so then I go into this mode of just studying every aspect of it, and I figure out what the difference is between the old way of doing it and the new way of doing it, and why the new way of doing it is better, and I would then apply that new way. But the TI aspect is more like finding the consistency of it, like making sure that the new way still does what the old way did, and ensuring that it actually does indeed perform better. So yeah, I go through all of that.
So something just occurred to me. In NLP, they have this thing where they don't want people asking why questions, they want people asking how questions. So to you, are how questions and thinking about how related to a TE approach, and for you, the why is more related to a subjective approach of the NI and the TI? Because remember, when you said that, what it's when you use the why, that started to make me think about, oh, there's a little bit more subjective thinking coming in here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That actually, yeah, how it's like you automatically you're sure to get a very TE response from me if you ask me, how do you do this? How do you do that? I'm like, okay, well, you do this, you do that, you do that. I'll just spit out a list.
So that's a tip, folks, for the Gamma NT is watching. Ask people questions how. Don't ask them why, because they might give you a load of NF flannel. Concentrate on the how to keep it practical. Right. So now we've done that, what I'll do is I'm not going to go through the other blocks and then do the bullet points. We're going to go to the bullet points now. Oh yes, this is a little bit of theory to show how important the creative function can be. So imagine that this is, imagine this stuff in blue is position 1 of ESFP. And imagine that this position in green is position 2. All of these bits here are from Kurz's ESFP profile. So I'll ask you, which function do they sound like?
People. Man, those first 4 words, it's like the complete opposite of me. Like threw me off. All right. Yeah, I no longer see it.
oh, if you click on my square, then it will stay on there.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, that performer. That sounds very FE-ish.
Yeah.
In an MBTI sense.
Then you got radiate warmth, lift others' spirits, charming them, communal in outlook, emotionally expressive, intent on pleasing everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So is it fair to put them in the FE category?
Yes.
Right. All of these are quotes from Kurz's ESFP profile, but these are used to get attention. All of these things are used as tools to get attention because the ESFP wants attention. They want to show how awesome they are. Now, they can have that thing where they have the Enneagram 2 thing, and I've asked Jeff about this, but to them, it's an instinct to help people. They're not doing it out of a sense of duty. So these in terms of the goals that the ESFP wants, and this is just used creatively to achieve these goals. So, Enrique, do you think that that is, at least in ESFP, that you can see how FE is used creatively, that it's strong, but not valued?
I suppose that would make sense. Yeah. I mean, I don't
Or at
really
least,
have,
yeah.
I don't really have ESFPs in my life that I can, I guess, correlate this to. So
Yeah,
I feel like I don't have enough data to
right.
answer this question.
Right. That's a very INTJ I.L.I answer, but a good answer. But yeah, I mean, when you see them just in interviews, you can see how charismatic ESFPs can be. And in that moment, they're sort of like the FI is pushed down, and they're in the mode of the SE and the FE. In terms of the SE, in the sense of being in the moment and reactive instinctively and improvising in the moment in a social interaction, and then the FE thing of using the people skills to achieve their objective of being awesome. Because ESFPs want to be awesome. Right. Jeff's son Morgan said that ESFPs in computer games, they'll want to enter a situation and look awesome to the other game players. Just do it with style. Rather than concentrating solely on how many people they kill, they want to do it in a cool way. Right. So we'll go to the bullet points now. So you can see here, oh yes, another example of how strong this function can be. ESFJ, FESE. I remember when I showed Sana a comment of what an ESFJ member wrote on her Facebook wall about somebody leaving out rubbish in front of her house that was a danger to children. And she got very annoyed and said that they were disgusting and despicable and called the police. And that is Mama Grizzly mode. And of course, and I would say that Sana's father is very strong at TE. Is that fair enough to say, Sana?
Yeah, when he wants to.
When he wants to, and it's used creatively. When he has to be, when he has to use it.
Yeah, but then he's very good at it.
Yep. And I agree with Dario that it depends on developments, how strong that function is. Whereas Victor's theory is that it's strong naturally. And Dario's written about how his TI vastly improved when he was working with LII resemblers when he was doing his PhD. So that's Dario's interview. I suggest people watch this. Just type in Dario Nardi interview and then look for that Christmas tree thing there. And you can search that on my channel. Right, okay. Now we're going to get to the bullet points for this section. Now that the positions have been explained, now we're going to look at the Jungian cognitive functions, or IMEs, as these two prefer to call them. There we go. Hopefully it's not putting it off with little. If the little boxes are in the way, oh, actually, that should work perfectly. I've outdone myself.
Yeah, it's fine.
So then, Enrique, if you read through the bullet points in the NI block, and then if you stop when you want to comment on it, that way I don't have to go through each one and then say, what do you think about this? Right, sure. So if you just read them out and then stop whenever you want to comment on it.
Yeah, I mean, the first one is very strong in me, I would say. Has an eye for detail, is good at noticing contradictions and omissions. I do that like 97.8% of the time.
That's very specific.
Yeah.
Yeah. Skeptical of hasty initiatives. Yeah, I don't like to be rushed.
I'm just going to interject a joke that Rachel, an ENFP Rachel, not RGS, a different Rachel, ENFP. What she said about, there was a line in Only Fools and Horses where somebody says, "Don't you know it's illegal to feed Emperor burgers to old age pensioners?" And then Rachel said, that law's a bit specific. Yeah, go back to what you said there, Enrique. Number 2, I think you're on.
Skeptical. Yeah, number 2. Skeptical of hasty initiatives. I don't really trust anything done quickly. It's challenging to. I feel. Yeah, how can you how can you put thought into it if you do it in a hasty manner? And if there's no thought into it, then you didn't account for potential pitfalls. So yeah, it always raises an eyebrow when I see something being done in a quick or hasty manner. Now, if the thought was already done and now all that's left to execute, then okay, that's fine. But let's say if there's no plan in place, no accounting for potential issues, then yeah, you should take your time and study.
I have a question for you about the tech field, because you're pretty much in the tech field.
Yes.
Do you think that some crazy things are happening indicative of being in a bubble, like say another tech bubble? Are you noticing crazy projects going on around you?
Crazy projects indicative of a tech bubble.
Yeah, overambitious projects.
I think there are a lot of people in the software development field that should really be doing something else. Because there isn't insert ego fixation here.
Yeah.
There isn't any there's a large group of people that don't put enough forethought into their work or their approach, and those projects, they inevitably fail, because whenever those issues arise, and let's say you built this whole mountain on top of wobbly legs, then yeah, it's gonna crumble. So
I'm going to give you a little bit of theory from Peter Schiff, and this is how interest rates affect things. And this is relevant, folks. So when it's cheap to borrow money, it means that you can pay it back over a longer time, because your cost of borrowing is longer. And so that encourages people to plan and have projects that pay off further into the future and are a little bit more tenuous, because they're able to borrow all of that money. Whereas if interest rates were higher, would you be thinking, Enrique, okay, when am I going to get my money back from this project so I can pay off this loan?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the whole if you I don't know if you're into crypto or not.
Yeah, that's a problem. Peter Schiff is not into crypto. It's basically a problem, but you go on.
But yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example of how I feel about hasty initiatives. I feel like people are just trying to jump on this thing, and these projects are being rolled out so fast that there isn't enough time to account for all the scenarios. So that's why a lot of them fail.
Yeah, and in terms of Bitcoin, folks, I'm not going to go over Bitcoin, but if you just type in Peter Schiff Bitcoin, it will give you all the reasons for why it's not going to work. Now, if I'll just say, if it was backed up by real gold, then it would work. It has no intrinsic value, and plus it's in competition with all of these rival other coins. If it was the only one out there, maybe, but governments are clamping down on it anyway. So it never had the original benefit that people said it would have, which is anonymity from governments. Because now it's also the way it transacts with how long the blockchain is. It's too wieldy, and then the cost of transaction as well is very high.
Yeah. All right. So number 3, very careful and capable of waiting for the right moment to act. Yeah, for sure. Trying to think of an example of that. I'm a very patient person, so
that's interesting.
I tend to. It's weird because there's a bit of a paradox there, because I can be very patient and very impatient. But when it comes to
I'm totally the same.
When it comes to waiting for the right time, I can be very patient. But once I already know that it's the right time, and let's say I'm depending on something else or someone else to execute something prior to me executing something, then in that scenario I can be very impatient.
I hear you.
It's a catch-22. It's interesting to observe those paradoxes within myself.
And in fact, I'm going to introduce that now into when I explain it, NI, to people in future, I'm going to say that it's not just a penchant long-term mindset, that it knows when to be impatient. It has an internal sense of when something needs to be done. It's not putting stuff off. Sometimes you also sense when there is a time for urgency. We need to get this thing done in a timely fashion.
Yep.
Yeah, it's about timing.
Yeah.
I think intuition of timing is a better term for it than intuition of time.
I've been reading through the because I'm working on translating the ENTJ profile, and it has things on there about the way it uses time. And of course, for ENTJs, they're a little bit more. They take more risks, and they sort of pressure people more to get things done. They're a little bit more hasty, and also they're a little bit more of an attitude of they don't beat themselves up as much with failure. ENTJs, the way I.L.I would. But just to let folks know, I've got the Google Translate of that from Victor. I'm doing my own translation. I'm scanning it. Then I'm going to send it to Maria, and then she's going to compare it against the original, and then we'll come out, because that way it's less work for Maria to translate it. Because if there's just obvious things that I can change, and then because it's a tough process, because Maria does a very good job with her translations. She gets the English very good. I think this one was translated by Maria. So this one on irony, I don't think it's just sarcasm, because I.L.Is are the best at sarcasm, and people should look on YouTube for. There's this black I.L.I weightlifter, and he's like doing the full INTJ, the full I.L.I on this other weightlifter who's selling this product called the Frog, and he has lines, and he shows a clip of the guy in the advert saying things like, "Oh, this has a cardio component," and then he stops the video and he says, "Yeah, line through your teeth has a cardio component as well." So this is a really great example of I.L.I in a non-stereotypical occupation in the weightlifting field and being on YouTube. So there's that kind of irony in terms of sarcasm, although that isn't exactly sarcasm; it's just more of the I.L.I attitude. Because there's the proper definition of sarcasm and irony: the expression of meaning through the use of words normally conveying opposite meaning. So that's one sense of irony, but there's also the sense of perversity of fate. So do you have a sense of things like that, Enrique, where, so for example, of the harder someone tries for something, the less likely they are to achieve it? Or there's the little ironic things in terms of getting the opposite result from what somebody intended.
I'm trying to think of how I apply this.
Right.
I can be a bit of a troll. So if someone similar, in the similar sense to that video you just mentioned, like if I already counted if I already accounted for all the edge cases of a specific scenario, and I already figured out what the which outcome has the highest probability of actually happening, and it happened, and let's say someone was hell bent on that's not going to happen, I might insert a trollish remark. I might say, oh, I thought, oh, that happened, right? I'm trying to be. Yeah, it's easier with a specific scenario, but
I think that I could almost like take a clip out this. This is an I.L.I moment. That thought process there of
pretty much, yeah.
how you use NI with TE in comparison with somebody like Sana when they use NI with the NF mindset of it's changes in people. So maybe you could say something about that, Sana. How is your NI, the focus of your NI, how it's used, different from Enrique's?
I think the difference is really just the area of fight. I don't really focus on the same stuff he focuses on.
Right.
Or it's more like a fringe focus.
Does your NI involve people?
Usually, yeah. Not always. It's not a definite, but most of the time, because that's the area of life that I'm going to be focused on. So I think NI just gets applied into whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's not like NI itself has a specific focus. You as a person do.
Yeah. Well, you're right about that. It's just that when it's used together with because it doesn't really exist by itself. It's not a separate element like we're building an artificial intelligence. We're like, this is the NI bit, but it's like you have this intuition of timing, as you say, but intuition of timing in an NF, and then the NF has the things that they're interested in, and they're going to be even more interested in it if they've gone into a line of work through their role enactments, so counseling someone is going to be even more. But I think Kersey would say, and Jeff would say, even when an IEI isn't a professional counselor, they will sort of fold into that role in their real life, just the way they end up offering advice to their friends in a sort of counseling role.
Yeah, I know. I see where people are and where they're going or where they need to go. I also see that in FI situations, as in my own relationships, at least if they're important enough. That's usually where the impatient or patient parts can kind of conflict, because I know how a relationship should be, and I know how to get there, but the other person can be very slow figuring it out.
Right. Yes, that's a big take-home lesson for me, that NI is not just about patience. It's knowing when also to grasp the nettle and when to no, this is the time to take the chance now, knowing that.
Yeah, exactly. You know what to do and when, generally.
Right. Do you both have a sense of this is a window of opportunity and it's going to close?
That's about the timing.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
just another way of saying timing.
Yeah.
I feel like too, I can also see those opportunities. Sometimes I can see them in advance before they arrive. You can. It's almost like you can see it from a distance developing, and then it's like, okay, not yet, not yet, not yet, now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then you just do it.
Then you
It's
just
the
act.
right moment to act.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know when is the right moment. I don't think about it. I just do it.
Yeah.
Right. The reason I'm glad you're saying these things is it gives what is the result, what is the usefulness of NI, rather than actually trying to talk about the process itself, which is extremely difficult. We can then better talk about the abilities associated with that function. And I think you've both given good examples of the associated abilities of NI. So what about number 5, Enrique?
Philosophical and contemplative outlook on life makes generalizations based on observations. Yeah, I consider myself to be a very philosophical person. I've been trying to figure out what are my most important I guess philosophical principles, and that's a bit of a challenge to articulate, but there's definitely a strong sense of that in my psyche, I would say.
Do you have any principles that are outside of your functional preference? Say if you were to categorize all of your principles, you might say, okay, that I could put that in the TE bucket, I could put that in the NI bucket, and the FI bucket, and the SE bucket. Are there any sort of principles that sort of fall outside of that functionally related preference?
Yeah, I need more time.
That's okay. It was a tough question. Let's just categorize your whole philosophy in a few seconds. Yes, it was a tough question. Because obviously people have thoughts and philosophies that lie outside of their functions. Not everything is not complete functional determinists, where everything that we think is determined by our functions.
Yeah, it's a little tricky to map that out, but that would be an interesting exercise, I think.
I think a lot of times with I.L.I, it's a lot would come under. I think a lot would come under the FI anyway, because FI is a very philosophical function.
Patiently guides others, preparing them for the next step. People that are, yeah, I mean, I'm not just going to guide anybody.
Yeah.
Those that are closest to me, if I see them going down the wrong path, or a path that wouldn't be beneficial to them, and I see it in advance, which often I do, I will definitely attempt to help them out. But if they don't accept my help, then okay, back to work.
What I should do is I could add in purple in future, just a bit that sort of like, it's not a question of being always patient. It's sometimes knowing when to be proactive, when to get in there. There's going to be times when, no, you don't patiently guide them. Right now, you're either sense, say in Santa's case, of you need an active push.
Yeah.
That's gonna come down to timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cause and effect-ish, because if you I don't know, I feel like the time IME NI it gives you a good sense of how much time you have to work with. So if my NI is telling me I have about a month to execute whatever I'm trying to do, then okay, I know I have a month. But if say I have like half an hour, then yeah, it's go time.
So I have a thought for you from David Kersey, for you and all the I.L.Is and INTJs watching, and that is the idea of sometimes if you're not sure of the cause, or if there are various possible causes, think about the context in which something happens rather than about the causes of something, because the context is real. Whereas, so for instance, that's like the how versus why thing. What are the circumstances in which this thing occurs? Because as you will know through looking at the theories of things, there have been many theories to explain the cause of something, but the context remains the same. So sometimes it might be not wanting to go down the rabbit hole of finding out the why, but it might be like the TE perspective. Okay, in this situation, this happens in this context. And so then you might concentrate on the context and then see how much the context fits other contexts for that situation. So there you might be using NE, but not for its own sake, but for seeing how well the context matches up to be able then to predict what happens. And this is an example of me just coming up with new stuff right now. This is how good Model G is for stimulating your thoughts.
I think you just described NI lead in general. Like that's what NI does. That's the kind of information it keeps track of. Yeah,
but that's an example though of how the NE runs in the background.
Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
they don't work alone.
Any serving NI.
But I mean,
yeah, because it was that thing there about every time you come across a new context of, so for example, if you know a certain thing's going to happen in context A, it's from your experience. Then when you come across another context, well, you have to fit that. You have a sense of feeling of which context. And of course, this is going to be more at an unconscious level of like, this situation is like this, and this tends to happen in this kind of situation. And so the NE thing.
What?
Yeah, go on.
What I'm saying is that's just the attitude you're always going to have.
Right. Okay.
As an NI lead.
Yeah, I'm just saying that when someone is an NI lead, that it's not just the NI, it's got that anything running in the background, but it's really slave to the NI.
Yeah, it's going to be working all the time. It's very unconscious, but it's going to be there as needed, and it's often needed.
Right. Right. So again, it's the context thing. And I can give you another example, say for an NFJ. If they have the right feeling about somebody, So if they think that somebody is like this other person, and then that other person is like that other person, then it's going to be easier to see how they can go. Because, you know, it's like the perception of similarities between different kinds of people. So maybe there could be a misread in the NI if they've misjudged the person. They've not.
Yes, you can misread, but it comes down to learning over time how much it can be generally applied and how much what's common in humanity and what are individual traits.
Right. Right.
So that's just something you have to learn over time.
Yeah. I should have really mentioned this later on with the anyway, so the next one is, I think it's number 7. Enrique.
Number 7, acts strategically on the basis of long-term goals. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's always a strategy, and I would say 98% of things that I do, there's always a strategy in place. Very, very rare when there is not a strategy in place. I'm either trying something new in some non-serious setting, or perhaps the strategy, yeah, if the strategy is already in place, then there's no need.
So in 30 years' time, do you see yourself as like a world mastermind living in a cult, living in an extinct volcano, and being a sort of James Bond villain? I mean, where do you see yourself in 30 years' time?
I'm not a mastermind. I'm a student. I don't subscribe to this idea of being a master of anything. I think I see myself more as a student of the whatever I'm interested in, and the part where I live in a volcano, I mean, I'm a hermit. I'm a hermit. I rarely leave my room. I work in there. I need to get out more. But so in that sense, yes. And villain, I tend to relate more with the villains than I do with the heroes.
That's because they have those master plans.
Yeah,
those long-term plans.
The heroes more like, we have to stop them. But,
right. Yes.
And it's like, for what? Like the villain. I don't know. There's all this. I mean, yeah, sure. Maybe they have shitty ethics, but
they have a plan.
It's impressive to see their plan and how they execute. I
used to read Doctor Who: The Unfolding Text, and the reason I bring this up is it wrote that in older stories you pretty much only had to work out the villain's motivation, because the hero didn't really have to be motivated other than to stop the villain.
Yeah, so, it's rather simplistic, I think. So yeah, I like movies where the bad guy wins.
Or rather where the I.L.I wins, who just happens to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
The plan for world domination. So you're probably watching it thinking, like, I love the plan. If you were just a nicer person, you'd be the perfect character for me.
Yeah, right? Yeah, just, maybe I often wonder, who hurt him?
Yeah, so if you want to know that James Bond film with the volcano thing, it's one of those 1960s ones with Sean Connery. So
okay.
But yeah, they had things that, and the one with Blofeld where he's got a cat in there, like Blofeld's like ultra I.L.I, stroking a cat. Yeah, classic Bond villain. We've got number 8.
Has good memory. Yeah, my short. I don't know if this is related to type or not, but my short-term memory is just garbage. It's really bad. Uh, my my long-term memory is pretty good though. I find that I can remember strange things for a really long time, but they're not really detailed. Like if you show me a math formula, I probably have to look at it once or twice, and it's there. I remember it. It's strange. But if you tell me, um, you gotta do this thing at 3 o'clock, I'm gonna remember that I have to do the thing. I'm not gonna remember 3 o'clock.
Right.
I have to put it in my calendar. So
Right.
so I feel like I do have good memory. It's just not short term. And I
I
am
want to point out something.
Go on then.
also wait. I don't
Okay.
want to lose my thought before I forget.
Right.
uh, it is very easy for me to remember a large amount of material, uh, long-term memory wise. Yeah, that's it. You were gonna say?
So yeah, I just want to point out that when it comes to you remember very specific things like math and stuff like that, but I've never known anyone who has such a crappy memory when it comes to just like daily conversations type of things.
I wake up every morning with a clean slate, pretty much. Short-term memory, clean slate.
Yeah, it's like I mean, there are so many times when I remember you telling me something and you had no clue that you did.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's related to type.
No, I don't think it is.
It may or may
honestly.
not.
Because I haven't observed it in other I.L.Is. So it's
Okay.
just a...
My personal theory would be that, and it relates to what Victor said about LII. He said that LIIs can pretty much best remember things when they're fitting it into a scheme. Now, he's a little bit deterministic here because he thinks that all the NI and SI DOMs have great memories, whereas Dario would say usually it's the SJs that have good memories because
I think it depends on what kind of memory.
I think
what it's associated with. Yeah, if it's more people related for the SFJs, it's more process related for the STJs, but that's because they're doing the same thing all the while, so they're going to remember it.
Well, I think sensory types are going to be remembering sensory details.
Yes.
I'm pretty good at remembering processes or
Right.
patterns or ways of doing things. Specific details, not so good at remembering. Yeah.
What I think it is because you've got your mind in your NT related sciencey computery things, that you have something to connect it to when you're remembering something. And also when you are remembering something in that field, it might change those things. And so it's not just a separate piece of information. That new piece of information has an impact on your existing knowledge base. And because it has such an impact, then you're not going to forget it. You're not going to forget that thing that completely changed your way of thinking.
Yeah. Interesting.
But when it comes to just daily things, conversations and stuff like that, I don't think that's a type related, and that is something he's really bad at.
Yeah, so if you have a big diary, Enrique, and you write down 6 p.m. for that call with Sana.
Yeah, if I don't log it somewhere, it's history. I think that TE has something to do with it. I suspect, because it tends to be I'm not sure how accurate this is, but I wonder if there's a TE filter in place for my short-term memory. Like if I can look it up, then why bother remembering?
You know what made me think? Now we're not onto it yet, but ethics of relations. So, I.L.I wants to have great relations with people. Really hungry for the great relations, but when it comes down to the energy of remembering certain things and things at certain times, maybe there's not as much energy for the implementation of the ethics of relations.
I'd agree with that 100%.
Right. And Sana, you're smart.
I would agree with that. From what I have observed.
Yeah. So what we got here is, because that's that thing there where Victor is like, when I saw associative information, I thought, you see, what he's done there is it's been influenced by the way the SI DOMs remember things, because the SI DOMs are very associative. So certain times in these Model Gs and in Socionics, you got to remember that this is in there because of the way Victor thinks deductively, that there's something at a higher order that is determined this bit. So, for example, that bit of 8 is determined by their mindset of receptive adaptive. So that is, so all of the I.L.Ps, all of the irrational introverts, here it is. Here's Victor's mindsets. There we go. VV Galenko. So yes, I changed it. I changed the translation from temperament to mindset. That's how much effort I went in to change it. So, because it is the mindset. It's like, is your mindset flexible, active, receptive, adaptive? But I think I can see it. Right, okay, so this is something I can get into. Internally.
So are we going to go... Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
I was just going to ask if we're going to go through all the positions, because we're taking a long time, and I know it.
Yeah, we may do it in 4 bits, but it's the way it is. I mean, good stuff has been said so far, rather than just like streaming through it. I think lots of new stuff has been said.
It's fine. We can do it on separate calls if time runs out.
Yeah, we could do it in like 4 different blocks, because not just concentrate on the social mission block. Because what I'm sort of saying, because this is the big thing of, because people looking at that, because from a distance, people just see the OCD TE part of the I.L.I. They're not seeing all the stuff on the inside.
Nope.
And so that's where this static dynamic thing comes in, where the inside is the opposite from the outside, because the outside is a compensation for the inside. So I think that with the static sensing types, they're bored to death on the inside and they want some stimulation. And so externally, they look like so if their external behavior is dynamic, that's because they want something to happen because they're bored on the inside. Whereas with the dynamic sensing types, they want their external environment organized, because it upsets their mood when it's not. Like a little bit of dirt or a speck on the wall will annoy the SI DOMs. Just affect their mood. It will be obnoxious to their eyes. So, and then also you have bits. I mean, some of these things here where it says adaptive and smooth, lazy and grumpy. Some of these things might be coming across from, say, Enneagram 9, because a lot, especially the SI DOMs, can sort of be 9-ish, especially SEI. So, and then oscillating moody so-and-sos. So yeah, so is that true, Enrique? Do you think for inside of you, but your external behavior can belie this? because when you're extroverting, you make sure it's productive.
Pretty much. So I don't think I understand your question. Which part of the chart are you asking me about?
It's the bottom bit. I'm wondering, does this sort of capture what you're like on the inside? But when you are active, when you do sort of decide to do something in the world that get out of your head, that you want to make sure that that is as productive as possible. And so from a productivity point of view, if someone was just looking at your productivity and somebody said, oh, this person's lazy, it was like, no, look at all the stuff they get done. But in terms of the amount of energy you expended, it's not that much. It's just that you spent it very well.
Yes, that's definitely accurate. I plan out my day every day in my head. I don't walk around with a little daily planner. But yeah, my day usually 95% accuracy goes according to plan, and I do use my energy wisely. And yeah, if someone just watching me out and about getting things done, I'm probably gonna look like a ENTJ or maybe even an ESTJ. But if they they obviously don't know what's going on in my head, so all you're gonna get is that TESC.
Right now, so the knock-on effect of this. So again, I'm coming up with new stuff here because of the context. So the context is going to be, because you do have this need to spend your limited energy very wisely, and because it gets spent on TE things, a lot of the energy that you expend will be on TE things. And then also when you're on your territory, because you do have energy for extroverted sensing. So it's going to be a combination of, I would think for many I.L.Is, they're going to be productive at work, then they're going to chill, do their NI thing, and then they're going to do their computer games SE thing, or maybe even martial arts. But then that little other area of their life, and there's not much time left for the ethics of relations stuff. Because you spent the time on the extroverted thinking and the extroverted sensation.
Wow, that's you basically just summed up the scheduling of my day to day. That's basically how I schedule my day, actually. Yeah, it's read, study, work, exercise, or handball, or whatever sport I want to play, and yeah, by then there isn't time for much else.
Right.
So
Getting on to that question of sport. So I would say a difference between SE sport and SI sport. The SI sport might be more for relaxation, say something like yoga, going out, hiking, but in your case, do you like the sport where you're in the moment and you have to react?
yes. So I don't know if you're familiar with handball. It's very similar to racquetball, where you're hitting a ball against a wall. But with handball, you're not using a racket. You're using your hand. So I can play that game for 6 hours straight.
Oh, SE points.
I do not. I love it. I don't get tired. I'm also I have a 3-year-old son. I put him in martial arts, and it's very nice to watch him do the martial arts. So it's very SE. I also I have this ridiculous plan of I want to go cage diving with great white sharks. Yeah.
You're having a Dario moment where the extroverted sensing comes out.
Yeah, it's one day I'm gonna do it. I don't
Hey,
know.
I saw on this video of this woman was doing it. This attractive woman went into a cage. I thought the cage was ridiculous though, because there were like 1 foot gaps between the bars, and it was like, that's a little bit close. And the shark did get in a nipper. So it's like, no, inspect the equipment before you go in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's I wouldn't yeah, I don't know why I want to do that. When I apply my NITE, it's like a totally stupid idea.
Right.
But it's something about it is very interesting.
Yes, and that's how you have to watch out for the bit of advice there for the I.L.Is is watch out if it's got an extroverted sensing component to it, because that you can be manipulated by that because of that need for that. So maybe you maybe sometimes caught in two minds about a project that is a little bit dubious, but it promises some extroverted sensing payoff in it. So it's learning to put the extroverted sensing in its little box. Don't get too carried away with it.
Yeah.
Also, you're just as competitive as I am.
Yeah, I'm definitely a competitive person.
In fact, Kersey originally, in one part of the book in Personology, he calls them the competitors, and then changed it to the contenders. So yeah, the IIs and the I.L.Is are confrontative contenders. One strategic, as in your case, Enrique, and diplomatic in Sanna's case. So she's probably thinking, oh, I can be plenty undiplomatic then. So yeah, if we just do now, we do the. So what we can do is do this in 4 videos. We are retaining 5 viewers. So TI plus. All right, okay. I'll just do a little bit on the different kinds of NI according to Victor, and that little bit in bold about the fact that that people can switch between the two, and especially when it's a function of, to lose classical terminology, the more dimensions a function has, the more both sides of it can be used.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So
I don't feel like I mean I do feel that I probably do, but I feel like I kind of fluidly switch between them as needed. So I don't feel like there is any difficulty with the using the NI minus.
I think I tend to I minimize the negative, especially in the case of engaging NI. I use NI to minimize the negative. If I see, I don't know, if I'm doing something and I foresee a potential failure or an error that can occur, or some kind of nonsense that I don't think I have to deal with, I find a way to account for that in a manner that it does not negatively impact me or my project. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. Although I would say that I also apply NI plus, but I do more of NI minus, I think.
yeah.
Do you feel like you have difficulty switching between them, or is it as easy as described? Because I don't feel like I even notice if I switch.
Yeah, it's kind of hard
them.
to answer. To me, if
it's more an overall
yeah
than switching between them.
Yeah, like if I see a beneficial.
I will be just NI minus stuff.
I agree though. If I see a beneficial outcome, I also try to see how can I maximize the benefit if possible. So, but I think I do more of the minus, and I don't think it's difficult to switch. I just simply do more of the minus. Yeah, I'm gonna think about this more. Probably tonight.
I think overall, though, I mean, the general impression. I mean, Victor is calling the I.L.I the critic, and so they're generally looking towards the negative.
Yeah, that would make more sense. I mean, for me, I don't know any other I.L.Is, so I can't really make a general observation of the type. But me for sure, if yeah, and I minus most of the time.
Also, when you look at when Kersey is describing the type, and Kersey has a role variant that the type is predisposed to. So he would say that the INTJ, the I.L.I, is predisposed to contingency planning. And of course, in contingency planning, you're looking at where things can go wrong. So you're looking at minimizing negative consequences.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I do this for more than 8 hours when I work. I'm constantly reviewing other people's code and looking for errors, looking for bugs, looking for mistakes, syntax errors, typos, you name it. I mean, my brain easily does this, and I don't even feel like I'm wasting energy. I can do it all day.
Right, and so that's going to be an example, folks. We have 6 viewers at the moment of your role enactment is going to have a positive feedback on your development of your functions in that, because you're going to get better and better and better at doing that kind of thing, in looking for the errors and the contingency planning, thinking it way, and you're going to get, because Dario Nardi has looked at the EEG of people and the effect of the career on somebody's EEG activity. So there is going to be a feedback.
There's a correlation. There's a has he found I guess, is he able to measure the usage of NI?
Yeah, because what he does is he takes people through a long series of tests. So, for example, so with the NI, he'll ask them things about imagining certain. He'll ask them things that we usually associate with it about time. He sees where the activity is, and he resembles I.L.I himself. I mean, he is gamma AF when you read his book, 8 Keys to Self-Leadership. He even tries to explain the benefit of the other functions in gamma terms. So that's how gamma is. So, for example, it'll explain the benefit of FE in terms of it's good for your business reputation. So he's explained it in terms of TE. Right. Yeah, I was just looking at this in order to see, because I had to do some lateral thinking of like to work out how long we've been going. Because I looked at when I sent the link. So although I did waffle on for about half an hour, so maybe it's not as long as what I thought. I waffled on for half an hour before we started, and then I did more. Then I did the recorded waffling. So now we go to TI plus. We'll just concentrate on this block. So using the TI plus creatively, and what we'll do at the moment is we'll just go over the difference between, because what you said there you're going to be a very good person for going through this, because you do so much of it. You practically enact this kind of stuff. So I think you're going to be using both sides of these in your role enactment, and then also naturally outside of your job. Yeah, and also in this, Victor uses it as an excuse to like get some digs in at Model A, and then compare it to his own school.
Yeah, both of these for sure. But I think it's more natural for me to. Yeah, I'm not seeing it anymore. Click on it.
Yeah. Yeah, you click on my square, it will stay on that, irrespective of who talks.
Okay. Proven to work.
Yeah. I'll just read it out for some people who are on a mobile device. And logic of a uniform structure. So this is for TI plus, L plus. Securing the structure that has proven to work, while considering all other structures incorrect. Rationalizing one and only one right decision. Stubbornly following your principles. Thorough reading of directions or drafts. Linear, either or way of thinking. That is the logic of information socionics, as well as the structural logic of LSI. So then I'll put my own notes in there. TI plus SX, but different from ISTP and MBTI. LSI resembles ISTJ and MBTI, but with an SP aggressor romance style that is un-SJ, i.e. not Kersey guardian helpmate. Right. TI minus. Now this one is a bit puffed up, because it's like describing basically how I.L.I works. By fractal, I mean fragmented and scalable. That's the kind of logic that can see order in chaos. And what is David Kersey writing about? Flipping edge of chaos and order. I'll tell you, these I.L.Is, I mean, they're so stereotypical, these pure ones. Just like you as a pure I.L.I. Almost pure.
Almost.
Yeah, because you have some personality outside of that. You're not completely just the I.L.I pattern. You are yourself as well. See order in chaos and allows describing the same object in multiple ways. The logic of contradictions and paradoxes, multidimensional polymorphic logic, relaxed and/or alternatives. This is the logic of synergistic socionics and the kind of structural logic characteristic of me. I mean, LII. And then INTP, then I'll put stuff there about Kersey Jr. that the Kersey architect profile was based on Kersey Jr. We know how LII Kersey Jr. is, and Victor typed him based on that 4-hour video that was all typed up for him, not by me. He typed him as LII. I think maybe as NI subtype. Right then. So you, as you said there, you think you do both of those. When do you think in which instances do you think you use one rather than the other?
Right decision. Yeah, I mean the first one, that one's very quite prominent. I typically, yeah, if there's more than one way to go about something, then to me that basically means more research is required.
Yeah,
because one of them
to
is
be
going
fair, though, sorry.
One of them.
Say, to be fair, though, it takes you a long time to reach a conclusion. It's not like you rush to it.
Yeah, it does. It does. It takes time. So.
Yeah, but is that because of the doubt though, and you want to be right about your conclusion?
Well, you got to prove that both you got to prove that your approach works.
Right.
So there's this thorough,
Right.
I guess I'm trying not to use technical terms, but it's this debugging,
Yeah.
basically, that happens. Oh, actually, you have it written right there. Yeah, that's exactly it. Debugging, like it's looking for potential inconsistencies within the system, and making sure that it's doing what it's built to do, and accounts for all cases. All cases. So a perfect example of this would be, I don't know, let's say, I'm gonna think of a simple case here. Let's say I'm building a text field for someone to enter their phone number on a website, right?
Yep.
You know, someone that doesn't do any of this, they would just build a text field and take whatever the user inputs. But you know, a phone number is only supposed to be numbers. So, you know, what if they put in some characters in there? What if they put in their name or something? You know, display error message. You know, you got to take all of these scenarios into account, and find the most efficient way, the most efficient path to get there.
What I would do is I would just write only numbers. Don't try and put letters in. But that's just me being lazy. You know, these weird things. They don't do that in England. They just do that. You know, where they have all the phones where they have the letters on, where the numbers correspond to a letter. But they never ever do that in British telephone numbers. It's just a number. Is that the same with you, Sana? Where it's like they never give a, like Peter Schiff had a call-in show for his, and it was like, and the number would be Schiff, and of course then you have to get all of the numbers that then fit that. So you'll get American phone numbers that were something like 08900 burp or something, or whatever word fits the numbers.
Yeah.
What was the question? I
can't remember. Do they have that in Finland, or just telephone numbers, just numbers, rather than having some letters in that correspond to the letters on the?
Oh, definitely no letters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's more consistent. But yeah, I mean, it's this process of proving that your solution works. And not only works, because that's not enough. It has to work better than what's already in place.
So what I'm getting from you is, and this is just an example, and this is something that matches up with Model G. It's almost as if you're doing the TI thing before the TE thing.
Yes. Well, it's kind of hard to, it's like a chicken and an egg type of scenario, because it's not quite clear which one is first. Well, the TE is like actually doing the thing, right?
Yeah, it's also the test. Like when you said that, it's when you then talked about you come up with a solution, and then you're talking about, but I have to prove that it works. I have to prove that it's better.
Yeah, the debugging aspect is I would say that part of it is definitely TI.
Yeah, structural logic. Yeah,
because you're looking for it's basically you're looking for inconsistencies.
right.
Yeah.
And I would think that if we're going on the strict Jungian definition of TI, which is subjective thinking, and this is a little bit different, that would more come into play if somebody is, say, creating code, I would imagine.
Yep. I'd agree with that.
Yeah. So now we're up to 7 viewers. So anything to say about the logic of fractal structure?
It's the kind of logic that can see order in chaos, multiple ways, multi-dimensional parallel. Well, yeah, one time, I guess well, definitely not just one time. I'm I'm thinking of instances where I'm new to a project and I'm given this code base and I know nothing of the code, and I'm supposed to fix whatever's wrong with it, and the code is written in a sloppy manner, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, all this chaos, and I then it's like that moment where you kind of start to see what's going on. Maybe that would be TI minus, where you start to see through the chaos almost, and you it's finding the optimal place where you can make it more consistent.
Right. That's a TE word, folks. Optimal. Whenever you hear an NT use the word optimal, they're thinking in TE ways.
Yeah,
I have heard that before.
Yeah.
Because it's usually about, when somebody uses the word optimal, it's like, okay, what gets towards this standard, this result, the optimal solution.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the theory would be that it's still TI being used as a tool. And so maybe I would imagine, thinking deductively and from what I know, that the I.L.I assembler would use this when they have a certain problem. And then they might think, okay, maybe I'm not looking at this problem right. And they'll look at the problem from different angles. So there's almost like a purpose behind this kind of thinking, rather than it being a natural thing of like an I.L.I just doing this for fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, I don't really do things for fun. I don't even know what the hell that means. Sounds like a waste of time.
Handball, 6 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, God damn it.
LII can poke out inconsistencies, point out inconsistencies too.
I think it's.
I was gonna say that too.
Hold on. There's a. I don't really focus on. It is fun, yeah, sure, but that's not. It shuts off my. I feel like my NI is at rest when I'm playing.
Right. This is a great point.
To me, it's a form of meditation. So it is fun, but I don't do it because it's fun. I do it because it helps me, I guess, prepare for the next week. It gives my break.
Right. So there's two NLP concepts that make this a bit more concrete. And in fact, because you resemble I.L.I so much, you might already be into NLP. So NI is a bit like the downtime. Downtime in NLP is being completely inside yourself, trance states, contemplation, so you're concentrating inwards. Another part of that is being through time. Rather than being actually in the moment, you're thinking of the consequences. Now, when you're doing your sporting thing, you are forced to do two things. One, you're in uptime. Your attention is directed completely outwards. And also, you are in the moment. Or maybe even thinking a few seconds ahead in terms of the consequences whilst playing that game. But you're not thinking half an hour ahead or the next day. You're thinking tactically.
It's the next second.
Yeah. Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because NLP was created by, big influence by Grinder, LSI. The other guy was a con man. Hope Bander's not listening to this, but yeah. So, no need to go on the courses, folks. I recommend do not go on the NLP courses, just buy the books. And buy the books that are recommended, the early books, not the books that are trying to rip it off. And I can give you an example of somebody who rips off NLP. which is a little bit ironic given that NLP itself is a bit of a rip-off of previous theorists. And that is Jordan Peterson, when he has his self-authoring course. That's based on NLP techniques. So then, we know what TI is. You're good at TI. So, I forgot a little something right at the start. For the SHS short definition of NI, put there's manifests in contemplative wait-and-see behavior. But I think that we would actually adjust that to, it's not just wait and see. It's also knowing when to act, isn't it? That is a big take-home lesson from both of you. It's not as passive as that. And this would actually go towards the Kersey dichotomy of directive, where the NJs can be directive. They know the time to act as well as be patient.
Mm-hmm.
So, SHSTI, a function that shows as calm, cool-headed, and pedantic behavior. Do you think that fits? Well, not just you, but a good definition of the externalization of the function.
I think so, because if you're not calm and cool, you're going to be clouded in your ability to understand whatever it is you're trying to understand. So yeah,
I like that. Yeah, go on.
I'm just trying to think. I don't. I can't. I wonder if I've ever in my life engaged TI while I was angry or in some type of emotional state. And I really can't think of a scenario where I'm able to do it, engage it effectively. Yeah, no.
This is interesting because part of the theory of this position is that it stops the function in the break position from working very well. And the way you describe TI, the way the description of TI here that you connect to in that short definition, you're thinking there is you need to be calm and cool in order to think properly. And so this is going to relate to the break function of the ethics of emotions, which you see as opposite to that. So the thing is, when this function tends to be active, it tends to suppress the dual function. So for you, as you're saying there, you're prioritizing being calm and cool, and that's the opposite of ethics of emotions.
Yeah.
In many instances. Now, sometimes they can work together. So, for example, when someone is trying to come up with a persuasive argument, I would say that is TI working with FE.
Yeah, I'm not in the business of persuading people. I don't think I've ever
It's
I'm
the
not
results. Yeah, it's like the results speak for themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like I shouldn't have to convince anyone of anything. If they just do the research and figure it out for themselves, then there it is.
Right. So then, if you go through the TI plus one, starting with number 1, what about that one?
Work slowly but conscientiously, paying close attention to detail. Yeah, for sure. For sure. If you, yeah, TI definitely makes me very detailed oriented when I'm in the process of analyzing whatever it is that I'm analyzing. And when I say analyzing, I really mean ensuring that it's consistent with my goal and ensuring that it's oh wow, that was like that was like TI functioning. It's TI in service of TE right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I make sure that it's consistent and there are no pitfalls, or make sure that there wasn't any
Yeah.
issue with the details.
Right. In that
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
I remember someone working on a web service, and there was a little typo in the URL of the web service, and this person was trying to figure out why it wasn't working for nearly 2 hours. And I'm just like, dude, like, there's an error on the name.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people aren't used to looking at the
Yeah,
URL.
interesting though. I figured it out. I mean, for me, it was just the first thing you look at. Obviously, I mean, the devil's in the details. So if you ignore the details, then you're susceptible to whatever kind of hell that's behind that door, you know. So yeah, it's the first thing I look at.
Yeah. That's going to be a combination of your predisposition to look at that, but also your role enactment of doing this for a living. It's going to make you more attentive to that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. All right, number 2, tries to calculate the possible outcomes in advance while striving to optimize the processes within a system and eliminate all defects. That sounds like my day-to-day life as an engineer. I mean, it's what I do. It's what I've been doing ever since I was 12. Has the mind of a programmer. I think I do. I am a programmer, so yeah. What does that mean, though? Has the mind of a programmer. I think that means that perhaps a better way to write that out, because I don't think it's very clear, but I understand what the goal was.
Yeah.
Thinks in terms of algorithms.
Yeah.
That's basically the mind of a programmer. Is everything is an algorithm. Even, I don't know, what's an algorithm? It's basically a step-by-step process of doing things.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything's an algorithm to me, and I'm often, which I guess when I encounter any, it's like there's no algorithm, so it's like, what the hell, what?
Yeah.
It's hard to understand what's going on inside, but
yeah, it's almost as if the NE people, of which I'm one, we get stuck in the exploratory phase of, rather than, okay, this is the connection, then we're going to do the work. It's the exploratory phase which is interesting to us.
Yeah, which I would say I don't explore a lot. It would probably be beneficial to me to explore a little more, but it's tough to find time to do that for some reason.
Yeah. So ENTP, when they've got strong creative TE in that social mission block, then they can apply their knowledge. And I don't think there's that many people that are like the proper role enactment of ENTP. I would think a higher percentage of I.L.Is are like you than I.L.Es are like inventors. Because it just requires so much more discipline, and finding a disciplined ENTP is quite difficult, whereas the I.L.I is naturally disciplined. In there, if you talk about both of them obviously are NTs and have NT interests, but the ENTP spreads themselves so thinly that in the way the world works today, where it's much more like narrow fields and you have to master a narrow field. So it's going to be harder than, say, if you had a situation 1,000 years ago for the ENTP where they might do better off because there's not that much to learn. So they actually said about Aristotle that it was probably the only person in human history who pretty much did learn everything there was to learn at his time. Whereas now, ENTPs might try and do that, but they're still not going to be able to do it. And if they did, it'd be such a skin-deep appreciation that they couldn't really do much with it.
Yeah, although I did read that most entrepreneurs are most successful entrepreneurs are ENTPs.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how accurate that is, but I could theoretically see why that would be.
Yeah, but that's one thing. But what percentage of ENTPs are successful entrepreneurs? So you have to sort of like flip it around.
Yeah.
Whereas most entrepreneurs are going to be ENTJ, are going to resemble ENTP and ENTJ.
Yeah, you know, going back to thinking in algorithms, when you're an entrepreneur, you can't really. I would say that you're at a disadvantage if you think in algorithms, because there's just so many random things that happen when you start a business that you just have to react fast. Yeah. And you don't have a lot of time to develop an algorithm for each specific scenario that happens, so it's tricky.
It depends if you are now, if you're doing it in an LSE style of where you're doing a business and you're just trying to get ahead by having large volume and low margins. So retail, where your business advantage is not through novelty, it's through getting stuff done as efficiently as possible. And most businesses like that, rather than being cutting edge stuff that requires, and a lot of the cutting edge stuff requires a lot of capital. And they're the people that go to the Dragon's Den things of venture capitalists. So, and the kind of people that would invest in those are the people who can see the ENTP, it's like they see the possibilities. Most ENTPs can see the possibilities, but have they got the extroverted thinking to concentrate on that thing?
Well, yeah, that requires a step-by-step approach.
Yeah.
That's the mind of a programmer type.
Yeah. Yeah, but what I'm sort of saying is that the way modern society is with technology, it's sort of like it favors some types over others.
Yeah, there's I think though there's a place for every type.
Yeah.
There's a place for every type.
Well, what I sort of mean by that is, like, in the realm of IT, I think it's easier for a larger percentage of I.L.Is are suited to that. Because, like I said, all this stuff here, you have a natural predisposition for this. An ENTP in the same situation, they don't have a natural predisposition for it. So it depends on other, and if there's fewer distractions, because Sana's father was in the IT area, but when computers were rather different. But it's just that if you think of most ENTPs resembling Enneagram Type 7, then it's going to be difficult to think of them buckling down. And I mean, I would think the classically well-developed ENTP would like be focused on getting one business set up, and then they'll move on to a different business. So they'll be focused for about 5 years and then do something completely different. But these are all going to be rare individuals of each type, like the well-developed, what correct me what are called the plus variants, like the sort of like the highly developed version of each.
Yeah, it's like the best case scenario.
Yeah. One thing to think of is, and a way I can sort of prove this via consistency, it's not really proof, but it's supporting evidence. If you look at the Reese and Hudson levels of development for the Enneagram Type 7, level 3 is about being productive. So If you're an ENTP and you're below level 3, you're not going to be able to do that. Whereas with I.L.I, I don't think they need to be at level 3. They can be levels at 4 and 5 and still be able to do their thing.
Yeah, I'm Enneagram 1 wing 2.
Wow.
And,
Super TI plus.
pretty much. And my tri-type is 153.
Wow, that's a good combination for BIM. But your field 1, 5, and 3. Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to have a look which one Catherine Fiver calls that one. The 135 tri-type archetype. We might be able to do a hangout with Jonathan on that in future. So then, we did number 1, I think. Number 2.
I think we're
oh yeah, we did that. Yeah, sorry. Your short-term memory isn't that bad. I did that. Number 4. That's it. Number 4.
Yeah, prone to accumulation of analysis of information in various spheres of knowledge. Yeah, for sure.
One moment. I actually think that's in the wrong category. I think Victor should have put that in the NE box.
The NE box.
Yeah, for the ignorer. Because it's like, the idea is that that's about accumulated information and you don't really do a lot with it. It's called the inflation avoidance block. And you have high information for it, but you don't really act on it. So, although I would say the analysis is TI plus. I just think arguably it could go in the NE box.
Yeah, analysis for sure. Goes for TI.
Yeah.
But yeah, whatever.
Oh, I got it. Yeah, I'll just say one thing about. I've just thought now why he's put that in there. Because you know we said before that you can switch between both sides of the function. This would be an example of I.L.I switching to the TI minus. That bit with number 4, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whatever I get into, I tend to study it deeply. I read about it a lot. I watch videos. I gather as much knowledge as possible. I mean, when I first started studying socionics, it's almost like a bit of an obsession. Whenever I get into something whenever I explore one of my curiosities, I try my best to learn as much about the topic to the point where I can give a well-informed response if I'm asked a question about it.
Right.
So
in terms of how much you get into it, how many videos on this channel have you watched?
I lost count. I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hopefully you are subscribed, because I'm trying to get my subscriber count up to 1,000.
I am subscribed.
All right. So I remember you said that you watched one that was about 4 hours long. I think that may have been the one with Kersey Jr. going through the LII profile.
No, it was the I.L.I. Model G. Yeah, I gotta find it. I don't remember the title.
Was it the Victor one comparing with?
I think so. Yeah, Victor was in it.
Oh, I think that was only 2 hours, but it might have felt like 4 hours.
No, it was definitely 4 hours because I watched it twice and it was 4 hours each time.
With Victor in, that might have been the one on Quadras. That was quite long.
Yeah, I gotta I gotta look for it.
Right, okay. So anyway, we're back on track. So we've got here number 5. What about that one?
Intuitive area of expertise can be particularly meticulous and even pedantic.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, my job is a very meticulous job.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't
I'm gonna
think
go
it's
with yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very obvious yes for me.
Yeah.
Number 5.
Yeah, you can see how hard it is to get through all 8 positions in one video. So we're just going to do these 2. And that's why I'm forcing myself with the peanut shells to like just have it on a board like this and don't have any of the bullet points and try and get it done in less than 20 minutes and use this as the gateway drug to the longer videos.
I think this format is better because we can discuss
Yeah.
each function in detail.
Well, I'm glad you like it because it does appear that these there's videos on certain types that get watched in more depth than others. And as you can imagine, it's LII and I.L.I. So, I mean, we just mentioned that before. So when it says they're good at debugging organizational systems, do you do that outside of your job, say in things outside of the IT field?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's only off when I'm executing. When I'm not executing, I'm looking for just inefficiencies or better ways of doing things. And I can't say that I'm even consciously aware of it. I think I don't know, for instance, I'm trying to think of a scenario. Damn it.
It's okay.
Yeah. I don't know, like let's say we're at a table and maybe you put your cup at the end of the table, but you're sitting on this side. That's a terrible example, but that would catch my eye. I'd be like, why are you putting the cup over there if you're sitting over there? Wouldn't it be more efficient for you to go with your cup, sit at your desk with you, something like that? Yeah, it's a terrible example.
I mean, I would assume if I saw that, they've got a drink for somebody and their friend's going to come and sit there. But that's any of their fee. No, it's for somebody else. Put it into your mind that it's for somebody else.
Why would anyone get a drink for anybody else? That's absurd.
Well, they might have already had a drink. They might have. You never know. They might have just taken some kind of oral treatment and not. You see how the possibilities work, the different approach.
Yeah.
And you hit.
My shitty.
And you hit a big TE word, inefficiencies.
Oh man, yeah. I will not apologize for that.
Right then. So, folks, we've talked about this social mission block. We've touched on a little bit on the launcher function because of the values involved. We've touched a little bit on the demonstrative extroverted thinking function, and we touched a little bit on the extroverted sensor. Tiny bit on the FE break, a little bit. So we're going to cover these other ones in 3 more Hangouts. So I will wind down and say it is goodbye from me and from the other people.
Bye.
Yeah.
All right, then I'm going to press stop. Oh yeah, so folks, if you above this video,
think I'm disconnecting.
Yeah, one moment. I just need to tell people about the new feature. Above this video will be a tag that says it's hashtag NiTx. If you click on that, you should get a lot of videos on the I.L.I an INTJ type, and then there will be other hashtags. There'll be a hashtag which is like Model G hashtag. You click on that, you'll get other videos. There might even be one on there that says something like hashtag NIFX Sana to see other videos with Sana in. So that is a new feature, the hashtags. So I'm going to end it now.